Welcome back to Behind the Play. My name is Alex Adams, and today I'm very excited to introduce Tic Tac Omar of Yahoo and Zone Time. Thanks so much, Omar, for taking the time and coming on the show.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you. It's the off season is always interesting, especially being a Leafs fan. So I guess taking any opportunities to talk hockey has been great. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this.
I'm just for our sake, I'm hoping there's a Nylander trade in like 5 minutes, and then you.
Ah, I like it's so funny. My stance on the Nylander thing has been so roller coastery
Yeah,
because for the longest time I was on team get the deal done, figure it out later. And now, as I'm seeing like other extensions kick in from like other players and other teams, I'm like, you know what? I think I think this might be the time where a decision kind of needs to be made. That may not be ideal. That what maybe might help the Leafs long term. So
yeah.
but that would suck.
Well, I was gonna ask you about that later on, but I mean,
Mhm.
honestly, let's just get to it quickly.
Sure.
I guess my question for you is: do you take Nylander at like 9, 10 million, or like if you have kind of two options, like the red pill, blue pill from like the Matrix or something like that? Like, what pill do you take? Do you take trading Nylander just for like as much as you can get, or getting Nylander signed for like 7, 8 years at 9.5, $10 million? What would you do?
Um. So because of how the first wave of negotiations went,
Mhm.
and it's interesting because I was kind of sad and somber and frustrated with like how the Dubas situation played out. But upon reflection and seeing how where we are now, it's like okay, that like animosity I had towards the first wave of negotiations has kind of come up, and and we have seen it, right? Dubas said no, we can and we will to get the core signed. He got the core signed, and what do we have to show for it? Nothing, zilch, nada. Won one round, and that's it. And the issue that has come up in all of the playoff series is that when the going gets tough, they can't score. But the way that the team is built, the top players cannot not score. They have to be contributing. And the whole focus has been, well, the team has to get depth, the team has to get secondary scoring. But the way that the team is built salary wise, they can't rely on that. So going back to Nylander, the Toronto Maple Leafs cannot in any reality realm, whatever, they cannot afford another double digit player. So
Okay.
if Nylander is not willing to come down from 10, I'm sorry, you got to go. And it's not like because I want to trade you. It's not because I want to see you on another team or I want to see you win so elsewhere. I know there's a big portion of Leafs fans that are kind of divided on Nylander. There are some who acknowledge his growth and acknowledge the skill and acknowledge how he's gotten better defensively and compete. And there are those who still see him as that same 2014 kid who was just all offense, no defense, whatever. Like the trade would have to happen just because salary wise, it wouldn't fit. And the team needs to move away from this idea of letting the players, not just the stars, letting the players dictate the salary cap. It cannot happen anymore. Because if you continue this, if we give Nylander whatever he wants, okay, then when Martin negotiates, he'll say, you know what? Yeah, that $13 million deal that Columbus offered me. I want that plus an extra two. And then what does Matthews want? And then maybe Matthew Nyes. What if Matthew Nyes shreds his ELC and he's like, you know what? Yeah, I'll take like 5 years at nine. And they say why? I'm like, well, look what they did. So like they can't set that precedent anymore. So I don't know. I don't know exactly what my like final number is. Like I to be honest, I really liked the Timo Meyer deal. Like I always thought like an
Yeah.
8.8 times 8 would work. I'd even maybe a nine. Like if you're splitting hairs, maybe a nine and a half, but I wouldn't really like that. But like anything higher, you got to find something else. You have to go to some other team and say maybe this isn't a deal we want to make, but we have to. And maybe you try to recoup assets elsewhere. Maybe you hope that some prospects kind of come out of nowhere and fill a roster spot. But like just for the purpose of the thing, like the Leafs, Brad Treliving, Brendan Shanahan, they need to put their foot down. And if Nylander has to be the casualty, then it'll be unfortunate because we know he'll go to like I don't know, he'll go to like Carolina or or New Jersey or something. I don't know, and then win a cup and then say like, oh, no one liked me here and I won and it will hurt. But the salary wise, it can't fit, and that's just the reality.
I guess the question I've been thinking about a lot is, especially as a Sens fan, and DeBrincat obviously got traded, but just they
Mm-hmm.
would have been cap crunched. And for you, how big of a difference is in a salary cap world and the impact of a player signed to, a big number is there from a guy who signed to 8 million compared to 10 million? Like I don't know, like how big of a difference does that really make compared to just not having that player and using that 8 to 10 million on basically making yourself deeper and having guys on 3, 4, whatever $1 million contracts? Like how big of a difference and decision is that, do you think, in a salary cap NHL?
I think in a vacuum, it doesn't really make too much of a difference, but I think it depends on where you're starting from. So
Okay.
if you're a team like, I don't know, if you're a team like Vegas, for example, who doesn't have too much term or too much a high of a cap hit committed to players, if you're a team like New Jersey that's getting a lot of their star players on like good cap hits for term, then I don't think it matters too much. But a team like the Leafs, where you already have players that within the organization that are already making so much. I feel like it can be a little dangerous to play the game of, well, that's tomorrow's problem,
Yeah.
because I think that's the perspective that Dubas and company had when they initially signed those deals. Like we have the players, we have them. Like now let's just focus on winning games and trying to compete in the playoffs. That's tomorrow's problem. But now tomorrow is here, and they're in a worse off situation. And the bet that the Leafs had at the time was that, hey, the salary cap is going to go up. Well, things happen and the salary
Yeah.
cap didn't go up. So do we have the same plan of like, let's just sign Nylander to whatever number he needs so we can recoup the player and then hope that the salary cap goes up? But then what if the salary cap goes up only a certain degree, or what if other things come into play? And again, it's not necessarily the specific number, because I'm pretty sure Brandon Pridham, our Lord and Savior, who literally goes through the CBA and finds any way to make the Leafs cap compliant. Like I'm sure, as it stands, like Brandon Pridham could find a way to make it fit if they did decide to give Nylander like a 9.5 or a 10. I'm sure they could figure out some way. But it's the principle, and it's the
Mhm.
idea that they really need to start festering a culture, or at least a thought process, where it's just like, yes, this is what I can make, but I'm going to take this to put the team in a better situation so they can do X, Y, and Z moving forward. And it's so frustrating to look around the league and see so many other players do that. And it's like, why can't that be us? Like I'm looking at Alex DeBrincat take
Yeah.
a take
Uh,
a deal like a little under 8.
huh.
I'm like, man, you probably could have got so much higher.
Yeah.
Like I'm looking at like Nick Suzuki and Montreal, again, the Jack Hughes deal. Like there's so many solid deals around the league, and it's like, man, we need to start doing that. And to be honest, I think the only player on the Leafs who's legitimately taken a cut to stay has been Morgan Riley. Like that
Yeah.
7.5, like 8-year deal, that's probably it. I don't see any other. I don't see any other. I'm going to take $1 million off to stay here, aside from Riley. And I think that's what the Leafs need to attack or need to kind of address. Because again, I'm pretty sure they could find a way to fit Nylander, but it's the way in which they do it, and again, the message that's being sent that they really need to work on. Because I don't think that exists at all on this team right now.
Well, we went on a bit of a tangent because I wanted to go into your career and you just went straight into the Leafs, which is great. I loved it. So I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not complaining, but I'm gonna try to backtrack. So for you, Omar,
Mm.
how did you become a tortured Leafs fan? How did it all the misery begin?
Oh man. So I started watching hockey at the end of the '97 season. So when Detroit won another cup. And so I just started watching it randomly. And then, at the time as a kid, which is interesting because I think I'm putting this in air quotes, I think I got lucky, because when
Mhm.
I was a kid, being a Leafs fan wasn't the most popular because the team sucked. So
Yep.
you should see a lot of kids walking around with like Sens jerseys, Habs jerseys, a lot of Pens fans and stuff, especially growing up in Toronto. But there wasn't really a lot of like passion for the Leafs at the time. So just by chance, I wanted to start watching hockey more. The TV was on, so I'd watch Hockey Night in Canada and such. Um, and then I think what really there are two players that really, I guess, kind of up the ante for me as far as hockey goes. Matt Sundin, which a lot of
Mhm.
Leafs fans will always say, and also for me, Jerome McGinley.
Okay.
Jerome
Yeah.
McGinley was one of the first players I watched, one of the first black players I watched, and I was shocked. Like I was just like my
Wow.
jaw dropped. Like I thought like the pixels of my TV was like broken. Like I remember like going all the way close and like looking to see it. I'm like, no, that he is darker.
Yeah.
Okay. And then seeing him play and seeing him play as beyond just a person that's
Yeah.
just fighting or hitting, just an actual skilled player, just like completely changed my perspective on things. So so as far as like my I guess my fandom as being a hockey fan overall, like I have to attribute that to Jerome McGinley. And that's why I'm so upset that he couldn't get a cup. Like that was Jerome McGinley was the only reason I got close to cheering for Boston. Like when he went there, and I was like, okay. um, so it kind of just continued from there, and then just got more and more into watching the Leafs and those painful pre pre lockout years, and then the painful post lockout years. Just every year, just like watching and watching and kind of getting into debates and like heated conversations at school. But it all just started with just like watching Detroit win the cup back then. Ken Holland will probably talk about that a lot, and and then just seeing again they'll play and kind of seeing that that there are other types of people and other kinds of people within the game. I think that
Mhm.
kind of like activated a little curiosity within me, and then I started to watch it more. And then it was great. Like obviously, like growing up in Canada, like you play, you don't play as well if you don't have the I guess the dreams or the goal to make it further. But as far as like watching and being a fan, it all started then, and it's just gotten worse. A lot of people like Julian McKenzie, for example, like
Yeah.
always says like, "Oh, I don't understand I couldn't watch a team that just continuously fails all the time." And I was like, well, here's the thing, Julian. There will be a time where something will happen and it'll work out. And I want to say that I stuck it out through all of it. There's that famous screen cap from when the Rangers finally won the cup in '94, and
Oh.
there's that person in the crowd who says like, "Now I can die in peace." That will
Yes.
be me.
Yes. Yeah.
That will be me, or that will be so many people if the Leafs like win a Stanley Cup in our lifetime.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I don't think you're getting closer. It feels like you're getting a bit farther away from that. But I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's the part of the fandom, right? Like I think that's great. And I mean, for Julian's case, like it's not like the Flames and are going in the greatest place right now. So you maybe jumped on
Yeah.
the wrong boat. So friend of the show. But I want to ask you a little bit like how just I don't really know, but how did the name Tic Tac Tomar come about? I'm so curious. It's such a great name, by the way. I love
Yeah.
it.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I guess to talk to that, I guess I have to kind of go to the beginning of how like the Twitter aspect of stuff started. So, this happened, I want to say in 2012.
Okay.
And my little sister made a Twitter account and was just always like, oh, I have 14 followers and I have like 29 followers, and I was like, okay. And then she finally got like I think she got like to like 91 followers or something like that. So me being a little pestering brother, I was like, okay. So I made a Twitter account with the sole mission of just getting to 100 followers before she does. And then I did it, rubbed it in her face, and was like, ha. And then I just kept this Twitter account and wasn't really doing too much with it. And then during, I forgot who the Leafs were facing. I'm pretty sure it was one of the Pittsburgh games where Malkin was destroying us because that happened a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
And I was just getting so frustrated. I just started like just tweeting like, "Oh my gosh, this team!" And then someone else like commented was like, "Yeah, they're so frustrating." And then from there, I just started like trying I guess going to Twitter to kind of like express my thoughts on it. And then over the years, it kind of grew into that. I would like start like search gifs like through like the search meter, like post like Dragon Ball Z gifs of like
Yeah.
yeah, huge power play, or yeah, or if they lost like a crying thing or something like that. And then it got to the point where like there's only so much you can say within a tweet because of the character limit. And I got the idea of starting a blog because like maybe I can kind of have this website where I can start talking about hockey further and more detail. And I was a little on the fence about it because I was just like, yeah, this is something that can work, but like would it even go anywhere when they wouldn't even read. And then my girlfriend kind of gave me the the push to do it. You know, she's like, just try it, just do it. Like you never know. Like so I did it. Made the blog. It was fun. Had like post game recaps and like today in the NHL and stuff. And then one day someone from Fansided, Chris O'Kranitz, who was the site manager of Tip of the Tower at the time, asked if I wanted to contribute for the website, which was significant. And I remember just stressing over the first article. I'm pretty sure it was about Nazem Kadri, about how like he was like on one of the best deals ever, or
Mhm.
something like that. So that continued and that went on. And then I got an opportunity to be the site manager of A Winning Habit, which is a Montreal Canadian site. Now, awkward being a Leafs fan, and I got approached asking if I'd be willing to do it because they wanted to bring it back because that hadn't been dark for so long. And I thought about it, I'm like, hey, maybe it might be weird doing that, but I also thought it might be an opportunity to kind of practice some objective writing because as a fan, like you're gonna react like fan, like
Yeah.
trade this person, trade that person, even though at the time it's just like maybe you're being a little heated. So I thought it'd be a good opportunity to kind of practice that objective writing. So did that, and then once that started to grow a little bit, that's when a lot of the giffers that we're seeing now kind of started to come up. So like Flinter, for example,
Mhm.
Leafs and IMO, at least in my opinion, on Maple Leafs Hot Stove, for example, Jacqueline would all gif games. And I thought that'd be kind of be interesting to take it on upon myself, maybe see if I can kind of add my own like little flair to it. Because one, there's a lot of like funny moments that happen in games that we don't focus on, and also sometimes there are instances in times where you know yeah, it wasn't a goal or a highlight, but it's still a pretty interesting play. So I did that on that old initial account that I used to as competition for my sister, and then at some point it kind of got a little cluttered. So I thought, I'm gonna start over right from the beginning, fresh. Needed a name, and then Tic Tac Omar came up. So big fan of tic tac toe plays. I love them. They're
Yeah.
like just because there's nothing you can do, and when it's executed perfectly, it's so unfair. So I love watching like those tic tac toe plays. And then I just thought it worked with my name. Omar, Tic Tac Omar, and then capitalizing the T and the O kind of represented the Toronto, Ontario kind of aspect
Yeah.
there.
Oh, true.
So yeah, and then that's when it continued, and I think from there I was able to like kind of add my own little personality, my own little flair to the gifting, and again, like a lot of people liking and retweeting and sharing, and people using the gifs and the clips and stuff as far as like their analyses and stuff. Obviously, I use them myself, but then it kind of became a little spot where if you're a person that like couldn't watch the game, maybe you're working during a shift, and I got a lot of this feedback during the playoffs as well. Where like oh I'm working a shift and I can't watch the games. Like I'm just going through your feed, and it kind
Oh,
of slowly became something like that. This is kind of a mixed bag of everything. So that's
I don't
pretty
know.
much how Tic Tac Tomar kind of came to be.
And what's it like for you? Like obviously you're at Yahoo now and you have
Yeah,
your own time with Julian Avery and Sam and everyone else. What's
yeah.
that been like just to kind of be in the media world and like the hockey media world?
Yeah, that's been incredible. Yeah, but before Zone Time, there are definitely opportunities to kind of get like a little mini taste of the media world with like writing and such. But Zone Time is something different. I think it honestly feels like we're kind of like a family all together when we
Yeah.
talk. It's honestly like a highlight of my week because when it first got kind of up, brought up to me and like hearing the people who were going to be on it, I thought it was such an important opportunity because for the most part, when you think of the hockey fan or when you think of like a hockey media member, you don't imagine a person of color or whether they be black, black, brown, or Asian, for example. I thought it'd be I thought it'd be an interesting opportunity, not just audio wise, but also visually, to show that hockey media and people who cover the sport and who like the sport and who are passionate about the sport isn't just one particular thing, and that we can all have that same level of passion and analysis and expertise around hockey in the NHL, regardless of what you look like. And I think the thing that really stands out to me about Zone Time is that we really take those opportunities to kind of cover those topics where maybe some other personalities or some other hockey shows may shy away from or maybe might feel uncomfortable with. Um,
Hmm.
so I think those having Julian and Sam and Avery and Arun, for example, and all the others who have been on the show for the time, and kind of having that space to have those uncomfortable conversations has been really I think flourishing for me, definitely. And over the years, we've seen so many people like watch the show and comment on that exact same thing. And obviously, you have the haters who are like, "Oh, what do they know about hockey?"
Yeah.
Which kind of proves our point. But
Yeah.
but besides that, it's been, I think it's been such a rejuvenating space. And it's something that I'm very thankful for, not just in the sense of the hockey media aspect, but just literally just as a, personally, and as just and as friends, having those people to talk to and to conversate with has been awesome.
No, it's I really love the show, and like you guys are all great together, funny, and I think the perspective is just so needed in a sport that's just been not diverse for way too long. So, and hopefully
Mm-hmm.
that gets better. And I want to go into that. Like, what do you think that, like, obviously the hockey world is so far back from where it needs to be in terms of diversity, not just racially, but with gender and everything. But what things do you think are like kind of the easy things that might benefit the game of hockey in terms of diversity and inclusion and stuff like that? Like, what do you think are some easy things that we can kind of make and bring to the game of hockey that it's probably lacking right now?
Um, I think just accepting the fact that it's there and that it exists. And it's very, and it seems so simple, but I think it's a ball that the NHL continues to drop a lot.
Yep.
I remember this might be a year or two ago, but there was an unfortunate run of a lot of racially charged incidences that would take place not just in the NHL, or there's some in the AHL, or even just in the world of hockey overall. And anytime a media member would ask an NHL player about it, they would say kind of the same thing, like racism has no place in the game. I was like, but it is there.
Yeah.
So like, what are we gonna do about it? Um, so it's kind of sad because like you'd expect that a question like that would take such a long and detailed and like step by step process answer, but it generally just comes to the idea of just acknowledging that these things are here and acknowledging that these things exist and that these things are happening, whether you want whether you want them to or not. Like these things are taking place, and unfortunately, the league has such a tendency of taking so many steps backwards instead of forwards. I mean, even just recently, how now um,
Pride.
specialty warm up jerseys are
Yep.
completely banned, like everywhere,
So
just
dumb.
because of what, 6 or 8 players this
Yeah.
season who decided not to do it. We're going to completely cancel everything, and that's just so prototypical NHL. And it's just like instances like that where we you can actually have opportunities to have discussions and have conversations and kind of express the importance of them. And it's so unfortunate because you have organizations and players specifically that talk about how important these events are and how important these initiatives are. And now because of the NHL being the NHL, we're just hiding behind it. So I'm actually interested to see what specific organizations do moving forward. But the NHL as a whole just needs to acknowledge the fact that these things are taking place. I mean, to this day, I'm pretty sure the NHL still hasn't had any formal partnership or formal work with the Hockey Diversity
I was
Alliance,
going
and
to
that's
ask you about
something.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that's been going on for a long time, and they've been very vocal about it. They want to work, they want to band with the NHL, and the NHL doesn't seem to want to pony up for whatever reason. I don't know. I don't understand what they think the negative aspect of it could be. I don't understand what they think the backlash could be of it, but that's just another example. The NHL likes to think that it's just about hockey and that's it, but I think that ignores the context that a lot of the people within the league who both play in it, work in it, and watch it exist in.
No, I think what you're clearly showing is how much you love Gary Bettman. I think that's what I think that's what we're getting here. Yeah, yeah, Omar. I think you're
Oh.
his number one fan. I think, and I'm his second favorite fan. I that's my best transition from that to some kind of lighter stuff, but I think it's really
Mhm.
important to talk about the lack of diversity, and like I think the pride stuff is just bewildering. Like, I mean, yeah, and the Hockey Diversity Alliance, like it's such an easy thing. Like it's not hard to do.
Yeah.
So it's just a shame. And I think hopefully fans themselves kind of push it to the forefront. And I think for the most part, hockey fans at least maybe I don't know, maybe it's just the people I know, but are definitely more for inclusion than otherwise. So hopefully it changes.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think we can be optimistic and pessimistic at the same time. Uh, yeah, but I want to go to the NHL a little bit, and going on Gary Bettman. I always ask people on the show if they were Gary Bettman, which is funny in this case. But if you were a
Yeah.
Gary Bettman, Omar, and you could be commissioner for the day, and you could change one rule, what would it be?
Are we talking just like an on ice rule or like any rule at
Normally,
all?
normally it's an on ice, but you can take this wherever you want.
Okay. Oh, okay. Um, on ice. Hmm. Ooh, okay. On ice, if I would abolish being able to challenge an offside goal after 20 seconds of the zone entry.
Okay, cool.
So that's something I remember the first time I saw, I don't know who did it, but the first time I saw that kind of challenge, my jaw dropped. Entered the zone. They're cycling the puck for like a good 50 seconds. The goal goes in. It's a deflection in front. Everyone's celebrating. No, reviewed because the initial entry. And I was like, "Are you kidding me? That had like the entry had nothing to do with the actual goal." And like I get it, if it's blown offside, they never enter the zone. They don't have possession. They don't score. Yada yada. But that's something I would change because like again, I'm all for reviews, but the review process we even have in the NHL isn't
Oh,
even clear
takes so
cut.
long.
Like,
It takes so
no, I
long. Oh,
takes so long. We still don't know what the rules are. I don't know what goaltend interference is. I
yeah.
don't know what kick. I don't know what distinct kicking motion is. Like I don't know. I don't know what is and isn't a penalty. I think a lot of players don't know that as well. But yeah, as far as an on ice change, I would get rid of that. The ability to challenge a goal when the entry was like 50 seconds or a minute afterwards. If I could change it something overall, I wouldn't abolish the salary cap because I, in air quotes, understand its intended purpose.
Yeah.
But I think having some type of like
Luxury.
luxury
Yeah.
tax system, yeah, just like listen, this is the ceiling, but if you go over it, then this is the penalty that they have to pick, and maybe set like a limit of how much you can go over. Like, don't make it like an infinite amount. Like, say you can go like up to 10% over the salary cap or something. Because I think for the most part, for a lot of these like extreme situations we've seen where like, the Tampa Bays of the world and the Vegas Golden Knights of the world that have, ended the season and have hoisted the salary cup, the Stanley Cup with like I don't know, like a 95 million or a $91 million like salary cap hit. I think if there's some type of luxury tax where like they're over the cap, but like they're gonna get penalized for it, and maybe you have that money go towards like hockey related revenue, whatever it is, more ways so we can increase the salary cap. I think that's something that I would change. Will they do it? Probably not, but you can only hope.
No, for sure. And I'm gonna go off this a little bit, and in terms of asking you a couple of kind of fun questions, because I know on Zone Time
Mm.
you guys talk about no trade clauses, sorry. And
Oh,
and for me as a Sens fan, the Travis Hamonic contract just bewildered me. I know it bewildered you, but why do you think?
yeah, I was gonna yeah,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
no, go.
What were your thoughts on that? What were your like initial thoughts on that when you open up the cap front, you saw full no move for Travis Hamilton? What were your thoughts on that?
Well, there was two things. The first one was, wait, they signed him for more than league min, which I thought made no sense. I was like unless it's eight, I was like 1.1 for 2 years. Like if it's 1 year, I'm like, okay, maybe. Then
Yeah.
then you know how it works where you find out the details like a couple hours later, and then you hear a no trade
Yep.
clause, and you're just thinking, what? Like what? Wait, like where is this coming from? And then they're
Yeah.
saying, well, he wants to stay in Ottawa. I'm like, yeah, but okay, just don't give him one. Like if he wants to stay, it just makes no sense. I mean, I'm happy for him. He
Yeah.
seems like the guy's like, as a Sens fan, he seems like a big guy in the locker room. Everyone loves him, but just I don't understand it. And I know you guys talking about how there's no trade clause. There's no trade clauses in the NBA, and that's kind of
Yeah.
I think they should amend that. And but my question to you is really more because everyone seems to have if they have a modified no trade clause that it's to Canadian teams, like how much does this impact Canadian teams, the rise in no trade clauses given up by GMs? Because I think that actually has had a really negative impact on Canadian teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I want to say it was Brian Burke in his book that actually detailed that there's a good chunk of NHL players who like do not want to play in Canada.
Yeah, I
Whether
remember
it's the
that.
perception, whether it's the buzz, whether it's the taxes, whatever. But like there are a considerable amount of NHL players who don't want to play here. And yeah, I absolutely do think that kind of stifles player movement. And like the like the reason why a lot of people like, or at least from my understanding, why people love the NBA so much is because every year there is player movement left and right. But in the NHL, there are so many things that just hold it back. Whether it's trade clauses, whether it's the cap, whether it's just like it's just fits, organized culture, whatever. There's so many things that get in the way of trades being done. And yeah, I do think and I do wonder like how many teams have maybe lost out on acquiring like an impact player for maybe like a playoff run because maybe that player or player part of the package just didn't want to play in Canada for a couple of months. And at this point, it's almost as if the only way like Canadian teams can get elite talent is by drafting it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like you actually think it's like like would an Austin Matthews like freely sign in Toronto? Would a Stutzla, for example,
Yeah.
sign in Ottawa? Would Brady Kachuk sign in Ottawa? Would Elias Pettersson sign in Vancouver? Would Jonathan Huberdeau sign in Calgary? Unless they weren't placed there. Um, so I do think it is a an interesting point and an interesting tidbit because yeah, I do because yeah, I don't know. It's very fascinating. Like a lot of players would much rather like play in the States. And again, a prime example, and sorry to make this about the Leafs, but like we just witnessed Ryan O'Reilly sign
Yeah.
in Nashville because he didn't want to play in
And
Toronto. He
he's
didn't want to play too
Canadian.
close to
He's
home,
from
and he's a
Toronto.
Canadian kid. Exactly.
It's
So
so
yeah,
weird.
it's definitely there. It's definitely out there. And I'd be fascinated to see a reality where there are fewer trade protection or clauses on trades, and to see if that impacts the frequency of trades amongst teams, because that could be because like no trade protection or no move protection overall is definitely getting in the way of some decisions that GMs have to make.
Yeah, no, for sure. I just think it's such an interesting thing. And another topic of conversation, especially with how Vegas won the cup, is tandem goalies, and especially in a salary cap
Mm,
era. What are your thoughts on that? Like, do you think like how much should teams kind of, unless you have a Vasilevsky, like is it like what would you do if you're the Leafs? Like right now you have Wall, Samsonov, obviously Murray's probably out of the picture, but is that kind of the way to go now in a salary cap world, or do you think it's as much just if you're lucky enough you pay the guy like the Jets with Hellebuck? Like where do you kind of stand on this kind of issue of like how impactful goaltending is and how much of it is sustained and how much of it is just you throw it up in the air and sometimes it's a hot goalie and sometimes it's not?
yeah, one of the most frustrating things that I've noticed, I think, in my years of like actively watching hockey and actively watching the NHL, it pains me so much when a goalie comes out of nowhere and just morphs into a star. Because for the longest time, the Leafs have always been like answering the question, like, oh, who's the number one? Who's the number one? And before Freddie Anderson got here in 2016, we just
Yep.
had like a carousel of random people, and Anderson was our number one. And then Anderson would just poop himself in the playoffs all the time and then cost us game seven. So I'm like, okay, so do we actually need a number one goalie? And then you look around the league and then you're just seeing like Jordan Binnington come out of the ECHL. You're this year in Vegas. Aiden Hill come out of Vegas had like five goalies this year and they were fine. So I think overall the league is trending towards more tandem goalies, or at least like a 1A, 1B type of situation, and not necessarily having a bona fide number one. I think the idea of a true number one goalie that's playing like 60, 65 games, I think that's kind of an extinct concept. And even like the goalies that we consider number ones, like Andre Vasilevsky, he even mentioned at the end of this regular season that he was kind of tired, and
Yeah.
maybe he is playing a lot of games. So I wonder if that is something that Tampa kind of looks at next year. So I think the Leafs are definitely getting there, and I think it makes sense for them to. I think Samsonov has kind of proven that if you give him maybe like 30, 35 games, he can be good. And I think Joseph Woll has definitely proved that he has the ability to be an NHL goaltender, and maybe you can trust him with more games as opposed to kind of just playing on the second half of a back to back. But I do think that when it gets to the playoffs, you kind of have to know like who that person is going to be. I don't know if Tandem's going to work or works in the playoffs. In the regular season, I definitely think it works considering
Yeah.
how many games there are. But like
I was
once
gonna
the
say.
playoffs start, you kind of have to know like who is that person you're playing game 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, 6, and 7 if need be. But yeah, I think the league is definitely tending to that area. And I think that just speaks to how more difficult the league is. Both when it comes to like the grind, the scheduling, and also just the raw talent, the raw skill that you're seeing. Like you're seeing a lot of high octane offense on teams. Even teams that pride themselves on defense still have a lot of like full game breakers and such. And over time, I think goalies are kind of I wouldn't say getting overwhelmed by it, but I think are kind of need a different way to kind of overcome that. So yeah, speaking of goaltending, I'm not looking forward to us facing Corpusalo next year.
Are
I
you a
have Kareem
Corpusalo
Flash.
guy? That's been a big topic
Oh,
of contention. I don't know.
Corpusalo, man,
Is it 2020 bubble?
and
Is that what's
that's
ringing there?
exactly what it is.
That's
That's
it.
exactly what it is. He
Yeah.
came out of I had no idea who this guy was and stopped everything. Everything. Oh my gosh. So like I'm already not don't look forward to facing Ottawa. Like in my
Has
mind, they're
he
guaranteed
has he
losses
has he
just
been
because
good during the regular season as well, or was it just that playoffs against you guys? Like I don't I
I
don't
don't know. I think he was decent in on Columbus. I think he was okay on the Kings.
yeah. I
But
watched
man, like he's
yeah.
what?
No, I watched that Kings series and his numbers look terrible, but like the first four games, Edmonton probably could have swept them if it wasn't for Corpusalo. Like he was
Yeah,
outstanding and then he kind of fell off and they just had power plays and would just score. So
yeah.
that's not really his fault. And he had the weirdest numbers. I've never seen this and I'd love someone to do a deep dive, but his numbers are like top 5, 10, like high danger saves, and then it just falls off a cliff when it's power play. Like he's not good at making saves on the PK. I mean, so that's a
Yeah.
one that I'd be.
Corpusalo kind of reminds you of those. There are certain goalies that are the best when they're being just like pelted. You
Yes.
know what I mean? Like if
Yeah.
if, if Corpusalo was facing like
Craig
30,
Anderson would
40,
always do that in Ottawa.
exactly,
We're
exactly.
yeah,
So if Corpusalo is being lit up like shot after shot after shot, then I think he's good. But I think it's interesting that the system of the Kings, and they're very more like
they're a
recluse, and they're
defensive
trying to like
team.
kind of high kind of hang back defensively. I think that kind of hurt him because I think if he's a person that needs a lot of puck touches, so that is why I fear for that first game against Ottawa. We're gonna lose like 2-1
Yeah.
or
Yeah,
something like
probably.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, and we'll just have Brady Kachuk and Drake Batherson just like doing nothing in their own zone and letting a billion shots on net. I'm just kidding. They're
Oh,
not great defensive forwards. I want to ask you because this always comes up, and I'm always on the side of this league needs to fix its officiating. Why do you think the officiating is such a like point of contention in the playoffs? Like, and maybe how much does the game change from the regular season to the postseason?
Alex, it is night and day, man. Like, like I think the first time I really noticed how bad officiating is in the playoffs, I think was on I think it was Tampa's run, Tampa's bubble run to the cup.
Yeah.
That was one of the first times I really, really noticed it. Where just like Brian McDonough was doing the wildest things, and the rest was right there. And just like not calling it. Now, obviously, like growing up as a fan, you know that like certain things get like kind of get let go and such.
Mhm.
But I just find that the shift has been so drastic. And I think what's made it worse, especially in this past playoffs, is that it wouldn't necessarily change because of um the actual maybe the actual flow of the game, right? Because
Yeah.
we're kind of used to that, like if it's a game 7 overtime, yeah, nothing's getting called. Or you know what, like this team got 2 penalties, okay, so we know the next team's gonna get 2 penalties. But what I was noticing that was fascinating was that you would have some games that would be officiated like a regular season game in the same series, and then the next game with a different set of refs. It's
And then
prison
it's just,
rules,
yeah.
right? And I find that, and that needs to be addressed because I think that's when hockey is that it's at its most dangerous. And this is a conversation we've had on Zone Time for many years. And I think that the worst spot that you can be in as a player is when you do not know what you can and can't do.
Yep.
Um, and that in itself is very very frustrating, and especially in the playoffs where it's a game of inches. And like we've seen it, like ask Vegas about how they felt about that 5 minute major that got called on them against San Jose. That cost them the game. They were done.
Yeah.
Like Jonathan Marchessault was like, that cost us series. I'm like, you're absolutely right. Now granted, don't allow 4 goals on a power play, but that kind of cost them the game. So there's just no consistency, and I don't know why. I really don't understand why the league doesn't want to address that. I mean, like like for the most part, like NHL media and such have always been very careful about criticizing the refs, and especially if you look at like the Hockey Night in Canada panel, for example, Ron McLean is very pro ref and always tries to
Yeah.
kind of see the other side of things and such. And I know and I know that like if people are too critical of officiating like on national broadcasting, they'll get a call from the league and say like, hey, like tone it down and such. But like but let's just call the reality. Like people are betting on these games. People
Yeah.
are actually putting like legitimate money on these games. Like it's before, like we're past the part of just like wanting our team to win because we want them to win. But like there's actual like money and value and purpose to these games. So it is very frustrating when like you see something happen in real time, and then yeah, the refs don't look at the replay, but we see the replay, and then people like me that clips things record it, and then we put it on Twitter, and it's just like, hey, what the heck was this? Like this
Yeah.
wasn't a penalty, this wasn't a call. Um, and it's very messy. It's very very messy. And you would think that the NHL would learn about how costly certain like officiating calls could be. I mean, hey, 1999, his foot was in the crease. Are we
Yeah.
going to call that back? Nope, no, it's okay. All the confetti came down. Okay, we're fine. All right, sweet. All right. And I think when we're talking about like the business of it, it's just it's laughable, right? I'm watching the NBA that has their officiating like actually have reports about
Yeah.
things. There
I
are
was thinking
actual
about that. Yep.
yeah, there are actual
The 2 minute report.
consequences.
Yep.
Yeah, there are consequences for officials in the NBA if there are calls that are made that need clarification, that need some type of explanation. And I think that could really make a huge difference, right? Like it's one thing to have all of these instances where the officiating is so different, but we don't hear anything from them. Like we don't see like if they had a moment where they can just say, you know what, this is what I saw at the time. And then at the very least, we can see where they're coming from. But then all we get is that, don't question the refs. Don't question the refs, because if you do question the refs, we're not just going to call anything on you, Michael Bunting, right?
Yep.
Anything can happen to you, Michael Bunting, and we're not going to call anything for it, right? And I know I'm focusing on Bunting, but it happens to a lot of players.
No,
So
no,
it's like,
no.
what do players do? So it's like, do they just accept the crappiness of it all? Do they say something about it and then risk being alienated by the officials? Do they allow their coaches to say something about it and then the coaches get fined? Do the GMs say something about it and then the GMs get fined? So, like, what's the resolution? And at this point, again, because Gary Bettman is so willing to put a microphone in his face and say, you know what? No, we have the best officiating in the league in the world. Are you serious, man? So,
That's laughable.
I really don't know. So I feel like if they're not going to change the mentality when it comes to officiating. I know a big or popular theory has been change them from officials to game managers. I think
Mm.
that might make more sense because yeah, you're not officiating the game because you're seeing stuff and letting it go. You might be managing it, of
Yeah.
course, until the times where you completely lose control of a game, Graham.
Yep. No,
See, and
I was
again,
I
like,
was I
yeah.
was literally at a game. It was Ottawa. I don't know if you'd remember. It was Ottawa Flyers at the end of the year.
Mm,
And the Brinket got in a fight. I forget with who, but you could just tell. they just let everything go, and then it just became a shit show. Like, pardon my, my language, but it just like,
Yeah.
and that's not managing the game. And it was so clear, like everyone in the building could tell, and they just, I don't know. And I think Steve Dangle always talks about how in the playoffs there's less and less penalties as each game goes. So like game one, there's more
Yeah.
compared to game seven. Game three, there's more than game six, and vice versa. And it's like that's just not the same sport, right? And it's just it's a
Hmm.
shame. I don't
Yeah,
know if
that's
we're gonna,
frustrating as heck. Like,
I don't think we're gonna get any, I don't think the 2024 playoffs will be dramatically different from 2023, but you know,
probably not.
probably not, but
Pro-
we can hope. I want to go from despair to despair. So let's talk the Leafs. Obviously
oh,
team, and how what do you make of this summer? How confident are you that this team can be good again? Just, obviously Dubas left, you get True Living. Maybe that's a Shanahan, as GM as well.
mhm.
Obviously Nylander, we talked about at the front, just at the top of the show. Just what do you make of it all, and how do you feel about this team going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing about how the way this season ended was I had this weird apprehension to the off season. I knew that this off season was going to be bad because of all the contract stuff coming up and all the question marks. But what really, I guess, concerned me, or for a lack of a better choice of words, freaked me out a little bit
Okay.
about the team moving forward was that I didn't know what the plan was. And I
Mm,
think that's why a lot of Leafs fans, especially on Twitter, were very I guess polarizing and also extreme when it came to their takes regarding the Leafs because in the last 5 years or the last 5 to 6 years, we kind of knew what the plan was, right? We knew what the team was going to look like. We knew what the core was going to be. We had an idea what the goaltending was. We had an idea of who the GM is, what the coach is, what the vision is, and then that may happen and things just started taking place where just more question marks came up. Dubas was going to stay, and then he didn't. Then he was removed. Then we didn't know who the GM was going to be. The GM joined, and we didn't know what they were going to do. He couldn't make any deals, and he couldn't go to the draft table until Calgary selected. We don't know what the Austin Matthews contract is going to look like. We don't know what the Willie Nylander contract is going to look like. We don't know if that contract is going to be on this team. If he does get traded, what are they going? What are they going to? What are they going to get in return? We've added players. We've added Max Domi. We've added Tyler Bertuzzi, John Klingberg. How are they going? How are they going to work? If they all do well, are they going to want to stay because they're all 1 year deals? We can't necessarily envision what the team is going to look like because we don't know what the team looks like. But there can still be changes. There can still be moves and such. So, even Ryan Reeves as well. Which and that like I
how
understand the
did you feel
purpose.
about that?
I got it. I understood it. The 3 years is scary, but after looking at it, I think it came out that the contract doesn't fall under the 35 plus year contract, so it can be bought out. And
Okay.
if they did, the buyout would be like 450K or stuff like that. So it's like, okay, that's fine. So he
Or
plays with the one.
LTIR or something. I don't know.
Exactly, right. So I think after all of that fear kind of went away, then this like the slight growth of excitement because for me personally, this is the first year where the regular season actually matters. Now I know
Mm,
that might be a laughable thing for people who like watch leagues from afar because for the longest time it's just been like okay well they can finish first in the league but if they don't win a round it doesn't matter well we did right but it's interesting because the team is different and the team might play different. Sheldon Keefe has lost two of his toys. Justin Hall isn't here, and Alex Kerfoot isn't here. So I'm fascinated to see how Sheldon Keefe is going to coach the team. How are they going to play? How are they going to be more structured? Is this going to be the first year where we can actually get 4 lines of consistent offense? What prospects are actually going to graduate and then make the team? Joseph Wall looked incredible in the
yeah.
playoffs at the end of the season. Is that something that's going to continue? Can he be someone that maybe beats out Samsonov for that sole number one job once the playoffs begin? Where are they going to finish? right? The Atlanta, a man like Avery always makes fun of me for this, but like there is no peace in the Eastern Conference. The Eastern Conference is stacked, and it's so frustrating. Like
Yeah.
there's so
I,
many.
I'm talking to all my Sens fans, and they're like, "Oh, we're still good, even though we lost to Brinket." And I'm like, "Who do we beat out in the East?" I'm like, I love the team, but sure, they were better than last year. Sorry, but like the Atlantic, like the only bad team is Montreal, and they're still better than last year. Like every team should
Mhm.
be better or like still really good, and it's like just the Atlantic itself is just such a good division and conference in the East.
Yeah, exactly. And then like Buffalo was better. Boston, I'm not convinced Boston's completely done.
Yeah. Okay.
Detroit's trying to get there.
That
Florida's still
it's all
Florida.
Justin Hall and Ben Sherratt. I'm scared.
Oh boy, man, that's gonna be fascinating. So yeah, so there's a weird little apprehension, but also excitement at the same time. And of course, you want to see can they actually get it done once the playoffs start. So it's kind of a mixed bag, but I think this might be the first year where we might actually pay attention to every single game and not just say, you know what, we'll wait until April gets here. Until April gets here.
What's your kind of biggest concern or worry about this team?
Hmm. I guess my concern is that they will never learn. Um, and we saw a little bit of it in this year's playoffs, where I think you started to see Matthews kind of dig in a little bit more physically. There were some moments of Nylander kind of pushing back a little bit. Tavares does have his moments and such, but they need to understand that it's okay to be a jerk while playing hockey at the same time. It's okay to push back, and it's also okay to be the team that pushes first.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, the Leafs have always been a team that gets pushed, and then eventually they just snap and push back. And sometimes there are instances where they push first. But what I'm hoping to see is that throughout this entire season, that they push first. They start the fights, they start the scrums. And if anyone messes with them, they take it seriously. So I'm hoping the additions of Ryan Reeves and Max Domi and Tyler Bertuzzi, for example, help to kind of foster that culture of change where it's just like we're not the soft Toronto Maple Leafs anymore. You're not going to grab Austin Matthews and grab him by the collar and move him around. You're not going to put your glove in Mitch Marner's face and no one's going to do anything about it. And most importantly, we're not going to rely on a 39-year-old Mark Giordano to fight the battles for us. We're going to fight the battles ourselves. So that's what I'm really hoping that they learn, because if they learn that lesson, then they'll be able to thrive in the playoffs. And what we've seen every single year is that when they're confronted with physicality, with that pushback, they wilt and they fall back and they let the opposition dictate the play. So I'm hoping that they take the reins and they kind of push forward this time.
How confident are you in that they'll be a change team? How like in your gut, like, or if you had to do like a lie detector test, like
Mm-hmm.
how confident are you in this team?
Uh to be honest, I'm not that confident,
Okay.
and it's just from the place, just because there's no evidence, right? Like
Yeah.
there's nothing that I have seen that warrants me believing that they can do anything of like clear cut significance. I mean, if if the way they go out in the second round is a lot more sustainable or is a lot more stomachable, then yeah, maybe I might take that moral victory and say, you know what, they ran into a team that just beat Boston, it'll be fine. But man, they were down 3-0. Like, oh,
uh,
like there was nothing redeemable about that loss, and it was just shocking to me, especially the play of some of the star players, and how it's almost as if they waited. They kind of they took their opportunities, or they let Florida take their opportunities. They got screwed with. They got messed with. Sam Bennett ran their show. Radko Gudas ran their show, and no one did anything about it. No one stepped up. Um, so if I saw more of a pushback or more of an I guess a fought and a battled defeat, then I think I'd be more confident. But at this point, it's the same thing every year. Like, I'll believe it when I see it. I'm hoping the additions change it, but for now, it'll kind of be a bit of wishful thinking for me.
where do you stand on the core four? Like what do you think of that, the idea of the core four, and just is it something, because I know some people in, on Leafs Twitter are just break it up. Some people are saying it doesn't make sense to break it up, even though they've been so dreadful in the playoffs. Like, where do you stand on that?
I mean, we've seen so many instances of cores of teams that kind of stay together. They go through the downtimes, they go through the battles, and eventually they figure it out. I mean, a lot of people like to compare this team to like the Washington Capitals, who can never get past the second round. Emphasis on second. Um, right? They can never get it done, and eventually they did. But I this to be completely honest, for me, this was the year where I was like, they got to break it up. This was the year
Mhm.
where I was just like, you know what, one of them, it's not working.
Yeah.
It's not working. And again, because we saw another instance of when they needed goals the most, they couldn't get them from those core players. And the way that the team is built, salary cap wise, that can't happen. You
Yeah.
can't be relying on other players to do it when they're making that much money. So this was the year where I was honestly like, you know what? If they ended up moving one of them, this would have been it. Because clauses are ironically we're getting back to trade clauses that we talked about earlier. Because now that clauses have kicked in, that's
Yep.
the only I guess the only option of a trade there would be Nylander, but I don't know. I want to believe in them because again, they're special elite players, and growing up as a Leafs fan, like, these are the type of players I wanted for the longest time. And it's so crazy thinking, maybe we can't get it done without them because I think that we can, but again, there just hasn't been any evidence for it. So ah, it's unfortunate, and I hope that they do, but again, my confidence in those players getting it done together on this team I don't think is there anymore. Individually, if they went to other teams, absolutely, but together,
Yeah.
I don't know if they can. But I hope for my sanity they prove me wrong.
So where is Nylander to start the season? Is he a Toronto Maple Leaf or is he somewhere else?
I think he's a Leaf man, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. I think he's gonna sign like maybe like a day or two before training camp. I know a lot of people are like dying for the news now, but like it comes down to that old Lou Lamoriello quote: "If you have time, use it." And they have all the time in the world. It's July 2nd at the time we're recording this right now,
Yeah.
and they have all the time. There's no reason to rush. There's no reason to push unless Brad Treliving has come to the conclusion that we're moving on from this player, that maybe we do see something. I want to actually say that the Matthew Tkachuk deal happened sometime in like
Yeah, I think it was
July-ish
like July,
anyways.
like late July, I think. Like
Exactly, right.
or
So
something. Yeah.
yeah, so there's still a lot of decisions that kind of need to be made, but I truly do believe that something will be worked out. It came out, I want to say, from Chris Johnson on the CJ show with Julian McKenzie, that I'm pretty sure it was that show that said that Matthews would be willing to take a little bit less. And I know that the Leafs want to sign Nylander first and then Matthews
Yeah.
afterwards. I think it'd be awesome if you sign Matthews first and you show them that, like, hey, he's willing to take less. So maybe let's have everyone follow suit. But if you're asking me for a prediction, I think Nylander's going to be here come next season.
Well, thank you so much, Omar, for taking the time and doing this. I just want to, before I let you go, other than the Leafs, who's the most fascinating team to you in your mind going into next year as a most fascinating Canadian team, I should have said, for you, Omar?
Ooh. Ah. So. Hmm. Okay. I kind of have a chaotic answer. And
Okay.
Sam will kill me for this. I am fascinated to see what Vancouver
Wow.
does to
Okay.
try to actually be good this year,
They, yeah,
because they try it every year, and I don't know why. If there was ever a year to be bad, it was last year when literally the generational number one pick is from your area, grew up a fan of your team. So I'm fascinated to see what Vancouver tries to do to try to get better. And another team as well that I'm curious about is Winnipeg,
yeah,
especially after the package that they got in return for Dubois. I'm interested to see if they actually do end up trading Connor Hellebuck, or if they end up like seeing finding some way to salvage things and maybe he stays there, because if you're trading Hellebuck, then I don't know how you can proceed as far as trying to contend. So I think that could be an interesting first shoe to drop for them. So Vancouver, Winnipeg, and also of course Ottawa, because Ottawa, a team where we always lose to Ottawa. It's gonna happen, and I think it's fascinating that now the Battle of Ontario might actually mean something. For the
Yeah.
longest time, people always say like, "Oh, the Battle of Ontario." I'm like, man, Battle of Ontario hasn't been a thing since like 2006. Like both teams were bad at the same time. Ottawa was better for a while longer. They went to the Eastern Conference Final in 2017. Like, but now I think that we have growing cores both in Toronto and Ottawa. I'm hoping that we start to see some like actual like meaningful hockey where like playoffs are involved with Ottawa next year.
No, for sure. I mean, I kept joking to my Sens fans. I think it was this year because I was optimistic that we'd play the Leafs in the first round. Obviously, that didn't happen, but I think it will be a really interesting year. And I think the Jets definitely going to be really fascinating to see what they do. I wonder if the cap being so crunched and just what we talked about goalie tandems and how teams value goalies. I think Connor Hellebuck might just see that the Jets are the only team to pay him like $8-9 million, like for 6-7 years. Like I think it's just going to be really fascinating. And with the Canucks, it's just weird to see them at least this year. I don't know about you, Omar, but it felt as though they finally acted rationally with their cap space. I like Soucy's a good defenseman. It's weird to see them act somewhat rationally, but then they bought out Ekman Larson. So not the most
Yeah.
pleasant offseason. Yeah. But Omar, thanks so much for taking the time. I just want to give you the floor. Is there anything you want to plug for, follow you at Tic Tac Omar or, at Yahoo or Zone Time? Is there anything you want to plug before I let you go?
Yeah. So yeah, Tic Tac Omar is definitely the place to go as far as Twitter goes. Unless Twitter dies, then
Yeah, I know.
then
Are you a Threads guy? I went over and I liked it, but then it didn't really make a lot of sense. I don't really like the algorithm, but that's just me.
yeah, the algorithm is tough. Like you get all these people that you have never seen before,
Yep.
and it's just like you're going through your feed, and it's like,
I
okay,
take Shakira every day. It's fun. It's just
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
So I'm hoping that they fix that. But yeah, so if Twitter ends up falling, then Threads is the way to go. And yeah, Zone Time in the mentions on Yahoo, and also on next year, I believe I'll be doing report cards on the Athletic as well for the Leafs. So
Awesome.
those
Great.
places.
That's awesome, Omar. I'm excited to check that out. Thanks so much for doing this, and hopefully you have a great summer and the Leafs go to shit next year. I'm kidding, but
No, it's okay. I respect it. I
yeah,
respect
no,
it.
no, I'm kidding. I'm not a big Leafs hater. I was just really happy for Steve Dangle when they won, which was really funny just to see him like almost cry on camera when they won one playoff series. So that was fun for me. I don't know how you reacted, but it was funny to see the Leafs get some success and it just went away in 10 days.
Yeah, that was my Stanley Cup for sure. I'm not gonna lie. So
It's like you get like an engraved ring just for that. Just
they will definitely raise a banner in Scotiabank Arena, like one around.
the Raptors would always do division championships when they were good in like like 2015, 2016. You guys should do that with like one round playoff series. I think that should be a Toronto
Yeah,
thing.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll talk to Brendan Shanahan about it. We have to get that going quickly.
exactly. Well, thanks so much, Omar. I had a blast. I hope you did too. And hopefully do this again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.